That recording. Okay, so today we're going to run through the elemental estimate. Now, the purpose of the elemental estimate is to prepare a bill of quantities. We have built an extensive database that basically captures all the costings in construction, which has 8 levels of construction costings. It's not as simple as it looks in the background, but it's also very important to remember that estimating is not simple. One of the challenges that myself and my team face is making the right decisions on costings. So inside of our platform, once all the data is entered into the system, we've built functionality to change levels of costings, add markup, add contingency, and add all these types of features to make estimating really easy. So when we go to our active estimates, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pull up a blank estimate. I'm going to show you the basic functions of what we've set up. On the right-hand side, we have reporting. Now, this estimate should be blank. No, it's not. Let me just remove an item. I think it's in build. So what we have inside of our price library is all our recipes that we've built. What a construction recipe means for builders who don't understand what a construction recipe is we have a specific line item here that would be called face brick up to 40 meters. What our responsibility is to build a construction recipe that has all the items that's included in a face brick wall. So for example, how many bricks, potentially how many weep holes, how many cement, how much sand, what does the bricklayer pay? But then we go into further extent of this recipe and we go the square meters of the stud work. Then we got to go what's on the inside of that wall. So we've got the plasterboard, we've got the skirting, we've got the supply of the plasterboard, we've got the insulation, we've got the painting. It is a full recipe. So what I'm going to show you here is basically as soon as I enter this quantity of 40 meters, it's going to add the construction price. And on the right-hand side, we've got all our subtotals. So to explain that in a little bit more detail, this is the functions of the system. So it's exploded all those costings and all those quantities that are required for that wall. I am going to go into a little bit more detail about doing a whole complete estimation, but first it's very important to understand the functions of what we're building here. So as we exploded this recipe for a 40-meter wall, we know we've got 6,500 bricks. We need 6 cubic meters of sand. When we go down to the painting, we've got 120 square meters of internal wall. The way I got to 120 square meters was if I go 40 multiplied by 3, being a 3-meter high internal wall, we've got 120 square meters of internal wall painting. So that's the basic functions of what we're doing. I'll expand out and go into our fit out. So when we go into our kitchen, we will add in, for example, the sink. Let me find the sink. I add in one sink, and then I go show BOQ. What we're going to have here is the supply of the sink, the supply of the sink mixer, the plumber of the install of the taps and the install of the sink, and then the cleaning. These are the elements that are required for the sink. Now, we are not perfect. We do our absolute best to build out these construction recipes, and we're always refining the system. So part of the subscription and part of the membership, whatever it's called, is that we are responsible for the work that we do. So if there are mistakes, have a conversation. We are more than happy to fix it. But we have also spent a lot of time building out these recipes. So we expect on our side that the level of detail is high. So that's the basic fundamentals of how this system works. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to talk about all the features that's inside the program. First of all, what we've got here is an estimation of a single-story project. I'm just going to expand out the reporting to know what I'm dealing with. So on the right-hand side here, we've got our costings. We have the built estimation. That is the builder's construction price. Then we have an estimating contingency. What an estimating contingency means is, as estimators, we don't always get everything right, like what I said previously. We need to have an allowance for a costing that covers us for some unforeseen costs that happen in the project. So for example, carrying the timber from the front of the road to the house. We might not have that inside the estimation. We might absorb that cost in the contingency. It's a very important requirement. So that's why we have it in place. There's many of other reasons why we have estimating contingency, but it's all based on the risk of the project. We've got functionality to change those settings in the markup and contingency. We'll dive into that a little bit later. After that, then we have the final construction cost, 641. Then we add the builder's fees on top of that. It's very important to know that builder's fees is the actual margin, because inside of our platform, the way we approach markup and contingency is probably a little bit different. So we like to manually control the markup and contingency. This is found down the bottom when we expand out and explain a little bit more about what our markup and contingency table means. Jump into that a little bit later. After we've reviewed our table on the side, we go into what is the extended part of the costings. So on the right-hand side table here, we see preliminaries, earthworks, stormwater, blah, 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 blah. As we expand out on each category, it's going to give us a breakdown where the money sits. So we see the total allowance for the supply of the roof steel, the total allowance for the labor. Now, this is what the settings of the estimations has set up. Massaging the numbers or manipulating the numbers is just as critical as entering the data into the system. However, as an estimator, if we don't know how to enter the data into the system, we are not going to have a good estimation. So when I talk about entering data into the price library, it is really critical we understand what every feature means. As we're going through what we're talking about now, these are just the basic features of the system. When we click out on the plumbing fixtures, here's our total budgets that we've spent. As I click out on my electrical, here's my total budgets. It's not the bill of quantities, that is a separate tab, but what I'm showing you here is an overview of what we've done. If I collapse the supply and labor costings and I click out on the next field that is items added, these are the items that have been added from the price library. So what I've found difficult from time to time is clicking out every single section to see what's been added into my estimation. And it can be quite draining. Click, 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 click. The solution that we've done to solve that is we all have our master headings on the side. But what we're going to do is we're going to collapse each section and it's going to tell us what's been included. So if we're reviewing an estimation, we don't know what the boys at Estimating Online have done. We don't know what our team members have done. If we're reviewing an estimation, we want to go to items added, which is in our reporting tab, and we want to see what we've done. If I go into my concrete slab and I do not see 38 square meters of a 100 mil slab, I'm sort of asking the question like, where's my slab? I'd like to think that when we go into our windows, we see the square meters of the glazing, how many awning windows, but if we don't see the square meters of the windows, we know we've made a mistake. So this is very good for a check process. This is very good to understand what has happened. This is not the bill of quantities. This is setting up the estimation. Because what sometimes happens is we might have 33 square meters added, but we got to add waste. So in some of the items, we add waste into our bill of quantities, but this is a starting point to understand what we've done. Once again, the purpose of this call today is just to see the functions and make better decisions. A very, very, very important step that I like to do, and I like to educate my estimators on when we're reviewing an estimate, is looking at our supervision and contingency. As you see here, we have had no manual labor days added into the estimate. For me, that's a concern. So if I go down to my supervision, I will see that no additional labor days have been added. So that means that no risk has been added into the project. Quite a simple solution to find what is missing in the estimation. So that's the purpose of the additional items added. Next step that we're going to be looking at is the basic functions of putting an estimation together. In our last video, we spoke about the Rapid Pro, how we've got build details. The settings are exactly the same. The functions are exactly the same. So every time you see a black triangle, I'm asking you guys to click on the information to have a better understanding of what the item is about. Every time you see a gold triangle, please do not ignore the gold triangle. It's critical information and it changes the construction cost dramatically. For example, if I don't read the triangle, I think I'm a custom builder, regardless of what anyone says. That doesn't mean inside this program, you are a custom builder. This program is set up based around how you are charged. It has nothing to do with, I always do custom stuff. It is about how you are charged. For example, if this project that I've put together, if your trades and your suppliers charge you somewhere between $50 to $60 an hour, $70 an hour, you are changing your settings to a project builder. You might be building custom stuff, but the way you are charged as a project builder. So you'll see my price of $811 and it will automatically change to, wake up, $708. Very important to read the gold triangles. I have had a lot of conversations with people asking, what type of builder am I? My response, read the gold triangle. My team has a responsibility to make sure we populate information into these triangles. It's a work in progress. It is an absolute beast. So we're always going to be evolving and always adding stuff. All right, so location, we've already run through this information. Now we run into the nuts and bolts of the estimating. So five minutes ago, I explained to you guys how a recipe comes together and how the information is exploded. What we've got inside of our price library is critical. This is what sets up the estimation. So in these next coming weeks, I'm going to talk about a lot more information about how we put the estimation together, but the basic functions is a drop-down menu. The drop-down menu is set up how you build the house. For example, we don't have building out the kitchen at the very top. We're asking you simple questions that are very important related to estimating. How many houses? If we don't know what that means, click on the black triangle. It gives you a description. The blue triangle that we have in place is very important as well. If the estimator is making a decision and they want to write some comments, you click on the blue triangle, you write some comments, hit save, and then your builder or the person who is checking the estimation can have an understanding about what you've done. We've been very particular with our headings inside of our platform. There is no perfect way to display an estimation, but we're always open to ideas if things don't make sense. But we've done our best. And what's very important is to understand the structural elements of the build, to understand the building setup, which could also be known as the items to put the framing together. So as we expand out on the categories, we're asking you questions like demolition, internal walls, and it's important to put all that information together. So as I click out on timber framing, we have the ground floor timber slab. We have to add the setup and measure. As you see on this estimation, we missed it. Bad estimator. We have to do restumping. And we continue all the way through. Same process applies with the Rapid Pro estimation. We don't have a takeoff tool inside of our system. It's an expectation that we're going to measure externally and then add the quantities in manually. It is something we're possibly looking at further down the track, especially with the elemental estimate. But during our startup phase, it's not something that we're probably going to add into the system, but we're possibly going to look at it further down the track. As we go into build details, we can enter in the details about the roof. We can enter the details about the roof plumbing and just make good decisions about what we're doing. We go into some further extended detail about the fit out. Now, the fit out is critical. It's critical for me because this is where we separate the fit out costings. So, for example, if we don't separate the linear meters of the cabinets between the kitchen, laundry, ensuite, bathroom, we're never going to be able to set up the reporting that is visually on my right-hand side and say, Mr. Client, this is how much money we've spent in the kitchen. This is how much money we've spent in the laundry, bathroom. So as an estimator, it's very important to click out on every single line and every single category to get to where we need to. If we miss steps, we're missing costings. If we're missing costings, we're not doing our role as an estimator. It's tried to be set up as a simple process, but like I said, if we skip steps, it's costly. So it's very important to learn what's inside this price library so we can make better decisions and better outcomes. The training process that I do like to go through is it's important for level 1 to understand the electrical, second fixings, finishing items, and the finishing trades. In the second phase of what I believe training is all about is when we go around the structural elements of the build. So that's where we're setting up the foundations, the walls, and all the major structures of the estimate. The third phase, which is quite a complex phase, which I believe should only be managed by the builder, is managing the markup and contingency, and also the additional labor days. So what additional labor days for me means is like, if the carpentry is quite complex, we want to put in additional days into carpentry. These are our options we have. I'm going to try to speed this up a little bit and go a little bit quicker. So markup and contingency is very important. So the program will preset construction rates, but what's very important on our side is the builder needs to make a very good decision on what is difficult. So for example, if the concrete slab has lots of engineering, it's a bad site, things aren't going to run smoothly, what's going to happen is your concrete is going to charge you more money. So as an estimator, we need to understand the risk and increase the risk by adding markup and contingency. So my budget is set at $33,000 right now. What we're required to do is change our settings. Now, what I think builders should be doing, they should be running multiple estimates as a test phase. During that test phase, we're going to change our settings until we get to the quotation price or the final invoice price. Once you do that, builders and estimators are going to know what estimating online settings are. I can dive more into that at a little bit later stage, take it a little bit more slower, but that's in the coming weeks. The last step, I believe, is the BOQ. There's no point adding all the items, adding bits and pieces of items into the estimations and then reviewing your BOQ. Add all your items into the system, go into the BOQ. We've got functions that increase pricing really quickly and also change pricing really quickly. I believe, from my experience, once you have a full understanding of the program, this is when you're going to dive into the bill of quantities. It's extremely critical that we get this process right. We can control risk and specification on individual levels. So if I click out on the plumbing fixtures, I can change the specification for my oven and my appliances by clicking on this drop down on the corner here. I change it to low, the price goes down. If the homeowner wants to provide the lighting, I'm going to hit my circle button. All my lighting costs are going to disappear, but my labor is going to stay in place. Some other features we have in place is the plus and minus button. We can just manually increase pricing as we wish, hitting the plus or negative sign, increasing pricing by 5 to 10% every click. we can hit refresh. So if we make a mistake, hit refresh and it will restore back to original settings. Some other features we have in place is the lock function. Multiple reasons why you might use the lock function. Let's say you have got your concrete quote back, it's $43,000, press the lock, and now you can't adjust the features that's inside the system. So from here, you see that it's grayed out, you're comfortable with that price, move to the next one. Another feature that this BOQ is all about is adding an item into the estimation. So I like to think our database is pretty good. We're always growing on it. I think we added probably about another 50 to 60 recipes over the last 4 to 6 weeks just by adding more information into it. But we never have everything. So if you have an item that is on your plans and you got to go to your fixings and add that specific item in, if you go down to the right category and you hit the plus button, this is a very important step. Write your description, add the quantity, change the unit of measure, and put in the rate. The next step is very critical. We need to hit save. If we don't hit save, it won't go through. It's not an automated process. You must hit save. And then the costing goes into the estimate. Controls go a little bit past that as well. We have function to export the estimation into whatever software platform you use. We also have the function to change the construction rates that's inside of the system. So if you always buy concrete at $500 a cube, or your estimations always must be $500 a cube, regardless of what you pay, if you copy the product code on the right-hand side, you go to what we call our custom editor, and then you go to the rate settings, paste the code. What the builder can do from here is he can overwrite the construction price to always be $500. See if I can quickly do this. I hit update. The master settings for the external footings is always $500. I'm going to close my BOQ and open it back up again. And when I go into my external footings, you will see that the price is actually $650. The reason why the price is $650 is because we've added markup and contingency to our price. If I close my BOQ, I remove my markup and contingency. Wakey, wakey. Thanks to Zoom. When I reopen it, that should be removed and we should be a lot closer to the actual price. But from an estimating point of view, we always want to be over. We never want to be under. See if this worked. Now we're at $500 because I removed that contingency. Another feature is you can actually change the headings. So a lot of builders have their own preset headings. You can actually move where the concrete pump sits, put it into its own heading. What I'm trying to describe as that is we have our master headings. So from here, you can overwrite what this heading looks like. Let's just change the master heading for concrete and let's call it 0085 concrete. If I hit update, open BOQ, now my concrete header at the top says 0085 concrete, which replicates back into your project management software. If you export to CSV, what I'm going to do now is open it. Please be the right one. Now what we see here is our category name is exactly what we've overwritten item 2. We got plenty more features coming. The capacity of what we're building is almost unlimited. And, our goal is to try to make estimating easy. We want builders to have the same tools as an estimator because we need to be able to adjust pricing as fast as possible. I twisted my words a little bit there, but no, we're trying to make this process easy and give the builders the same tools as what we have. So that's a basic overview of the elemental estimate. Does anyone have any questions?
I might have one. Hi, Rick.
Hey, mate, go for it.
Yeah, just curious about the markup percentage. I'm not sure if this is already mentioned, but can we, or is the markup percentages only applied into the whole estimate at once, or can we also customize it per, say, per category or per line item within a category?
So see this line here? We
Yep.
have gray buttons. If we want to apply level 1 markup to the whole of the job, we just press the gray button and it will overwrite all the settings and it will basically put 2 dots into the whole system.
Okay.
As you see, that's overwritten. On the right-hand side here, it actually adds up what the contingency and markup is. So you might look at that when you're reviewing your data and kind of go, well, I've got builders margin at 15%, 2% estimating contingency, that gets us to 17%. Why am I putting 11% over the top of all of that? And this is where I feel markup should be controlled on an individual level. So why does the cleaner need to have markup and contingency? They shouldn't. I feel that's a small difference that we can make to win a job. On a $3 million job, that could actually mean a lot. But on some smaller jobs, it might not be might not be necessary.
Right. Right.
I haven't seen who's in the room. Is Aravin in? Yes. All right, I will close this off. I'm just going to stop record. I'll keep the room open for a little bit for any other extended questions. And that is the introduction to the elemental estimate.